coverage of the Saratoga Racing Meet, Capital OTB, and OTB TV.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. We made the quick change during the break. Joining us now, Rick Violette, as mentioned, president of the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning.
Happy to have you on board. One of the reasons we brought you in today was because obviously a hot button issue in racing over the past couple of years, racing horses medication. The Association of Racing Commissioners International had a meeting up here last week where they proposed and endorsed a new point system. And as I read it, it's kind of similar to what you get on your driver's license, with points accumulating, higher penalties, as the points do accumulate. Again, that's been proposed by the Association of Racing Commissioners International. What is the stance from New York Horsemen's Association and on the proposal?
We've been very supportive from the onset. Alan Foreman, the executive director of the THA, which is the kind of the umbrella group that NYFERS belongs to. We've been, steadfastly behind not only the point system but the Mid-Atlantic medication rules that had now been adopted by, or in the process of being adopted by 9 states. So this point system is just another piece of that puzzle. The industry a few years ago came under criticism for lax medication rules in some areas, for medication rules that weren't standard. Really changed dramatically from state to state. And frankly, this year is kind of a pivotal moment in history, something that people have cried about for 40, 50 years, about standardization of rules and the standardization of laboratories, and they have to meet a high standard to be able to participate in the testing of all the partner racetracks. So it's really kind of a pivotal moment in history where we have standardization, we've upgraded and improved the testing procedures, made some of the restrictions on medications that are permitted much further out from race time. And then the other valid criticism was our repeat offenders seem to get a slap on the wrist, and hopefully this point system will address that so that you're on notice. As you get more penalties, you are very much susceptible to another 30, 60, 90-day added penalty. So.
You alluded to it earlier, the number of states up here in this portion of the country, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, et cetera, came together earlier this year, Mid-Atlantic Uniform Medication Program. That is supposed to go into effect in 2014. Now, how does that tie into this? Because, as I say, the Mid-Atlantic medication, the uniform program, came out earlier this year. Are you now kind of updating, trying to go along with what the ARCI did?
I think the states that have adopted the Mid-Atlantic medication rules will quickly follow suit and adopt the new penalty structure. There's still some moving parts and some T's to be crossed, but California is on board. Illinois is very closely. They have another meeting this month to move forward on it, and we're certainly trying to get Kentucky and Florida on board as well.
And one of the big problems is there is no overarching authority for horse racing in the country. That means there aren't uniform rules state to state. That's the direction these are all moving in. Why are uniform rules important to the horsemen?
For a lot of reasons. You really, it gets very complicated shipping from state to state, whether there's a 5-day withdrawal, 10-day withdrawal, 30-day withdrawal on different medications, and it can get pretty dicey. Sometimes you miss races because you've gotten too close on a certain medication that you can't ship into Illinois or New York. So that's very important. We also took a very aggressive stance on corticosteroids, and especially Depomedrol, and move that out so they can't be used between earlier than 14 days before they race. So inside of 14 days before they race, and the other corticosteroids, it's 7 days before. In New York, we have a reporting system where if you do interarticular therapy using corticosteroids, the trainer or the veterinarian has to report it to the regulatory body within 48 hours. So we've made everybody a little bit more responsible. Certainly, we've done everything that we can do right now to protect the athletes, both the equine and the jockeys on their backs. And it's starting to get some recognition. I really think it's a very, very pivotal thing. I'd love to go back to D.C. And a few years ago, on the heels of 8 Bells, we were called in front of Congress, and rightly so in some areas, the aftercare stuff and the medication platforms. I'd love to go back because it's a great story to tell on both ends of it.
And that's one of the important things to me for uniform rules, just the PR side of things. Because as you said, some states are far more strict on a medication than other states, and so you could have something that's okayed over here, but you move to this state, you get flagged for it, and just from a PR standpoint, that looks bad.
It looks bad, and that's also one other major part of this whole puzzle is the standardization and the requirements that the laboratories now have to go through so that they can do the testing. And because there were some states and some laboratories that simply weren't qualified to do the work, and that's where there were some gaping holes. So now, with that standardization, we raised the bar there as to who can participate. It's a pretty. We're turning a corner. I think we took maybe some fair criticisms, but I have to say, both on the horseman side, on the regulatory side, we've rallied, and it's a very, very different picture than it was 5 years ago.
And what are the obstacles here to make it uniform from state to state? Because the Association of Racing Commissioners International is a racing organization. It's not a legislative kind of a body. From state to state, what obstacles do you have to jump to? What does it entail to get this implemented from state to state?
What complements it, there are different ways states adopt rules. Some states can actually just adopt the blanket program that the RCI has in place, and they don't have to get particular. Say we adopt the RCI rules. Other states have to pass either regulations or sometimes statutes to change their own medication rules. So it's hard. We've targeted January 1st, and actually we're probably ahead of the curve on a number of states. Illinois is ahead of the curve. West Virginia has jumped on board. So
how are we doing here?
Yeah, we're done.
Good to
I mean,
go?
basically, yeah, we're leading the way, to be honest with you.
Very good. And Rick, you kind of alluded to it earlier. Another hot button issue has been aftercare, second careers for racehorses. We had Rick Schosberg on earlier talking a little bit about the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association programs. But why don't you give us a little insight, because you're a former show jumper, and I know the Take Two program, the Take the Lead programs involve moving horses into second careers in that area as well.
It's been nothing but rewarding. Especially the horse show world has really jumped on board the Take Two program. That's where we supplement the purses for classes specifically for thoroughbreds in Class A shows. Saratoga has a couple of those shows. There were actually 50 shows across the country.
St. Clement's one of those?
Yep. And actually in Saugerties, they run all summer. Actually, the show in Vermont has a division. But we literally sponsored shows from Oregon to Florida and California to Vermont. There were 50 this year. We had 6 last year. So the race horse has now they do better when they have a job to do, and rather than just and those that retire and are physically able, we're just trying to make a ready arena for them to move on to, and it's been nothing short of stunning how quickly it's grown.
Yeah, and in fact, we had Sean Clancy on our show yesterday, and we were talking a little bit about that, and it's important to get these guys off the track while they're still intact and healthy, because that makes the second career a lot easier. We talked about a little bit about Mr. Hot Stuff, obviously, but it was also with horses moving on to these kind of show jumping careers.
No question, and when it becomes easier, then maybe that last race you don't need to do. You find a place and keep the horse physically, able just to kind of maybe let down a little bit after their racing career and move on to dressage, show jumping, Grand Prix jumping, whatever they're capable of doing.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we talked about. The mindset can change a little bit to, that last race, maybe the $4,500 purse, we can move the horse to another career. All right, Rick, before we let you go, certainly it's all about the horse racing up here at Saratoga, and with you it's a lot about 2-year-olds. Yeah. I certainly watch you and the Klarovich 2-year-olds, and over the years, I've caught on to you, Klarovich, coming out of the 2-year-old sales, but I noticed the last year or so, it seems like they have a lot of horses coming out of yearling sales. Seems like they've shifted a little bit.
It's a matter of sometimes premium. The further you get to from a yearling or a weanling to a racehorse, you pay a higher premium. Yeah. So sometimes you can get a little bit better pedigree at the yearling sales and not have to pay $1 zillion for them. So, but you hedge, you don't get to see them breeze, you don't get to see them move. So you just try to position yourself to take advantage of what's available at any of those sales.
All right, let me talk about some specifics and see if we'll see some Saratoga runners. Wanted to bring up, and I got this info from my buddy Paul Daly, who wrote a little bit. He plugs you into the column a lot, being a low boy. So, but he mentioned some horses that you talked about at the beginning of the meet. We have a little video here, a Permanent Campaign in the maiden special, second start of the career. Permanent Campaign is going to come down the stretch as the number 2 horse and take the lead late in this race down at Belmont at 5.5 furlongs, but will get caught by a Pletcher first-time starter Danza. But it was a pretty good effort by Permanent Campaign. Will we see Permanent Campaign up here at Saratoga?
Might see him next Saturday. He breezed this morning, and I think he's got a future. He wants to go 2 turns, I believe. This was a very good race. He and the Pletcher horse opened up 13 on the rest of the field from the head of the lane on, and that was fairly impressive. He dug in gamely and just got beat by a nice horse that day. That's all.
Yeah, and again, Pletcher firster, you're always up against it there. The other day, earlier in the meet, you started first time out, Financial Mogul for Klarovich. Was the favorite, wound up 4th that day. Will we see Financial Mogul back?
Yeah, he probably ran out of trainer at the 16th pole. He was a little bit short.
I like that. I don't think I've heard that before.
He wasn't prepped to run his best race of his life. Pressed a pace from kind of the middle of the racetrack and went 22 flat, and got a lot out of the race. And I think he's done enough in the mornings to think he can run a little bit.
Another horse that was mentioned in the article I alluded to, Effie Trinket, who's a nice little competitive runner coming off a couple of wins down at Belmont. See her at the meet?
Yes, she'll run on Saturday as well. There's a open mile on the 16th on the turf. I forget the name of the race. Yo Lang Syne, actually, for 100,000, and she breezed this morning as well, and she'll show up there. She's a neat filly.
Very good, and you already have the duck off, so
yeah.
Got that early in the meet. Yeah, there
now
you
you have to pay the bills.
There you go. All right, Rick, we appreciate the visit, and we'll be looking forward to the implementation of that uniform medication rule here in the Mid-Atlantic. Hopefully, it starts to spread across the country. So good luck on that front as well with the horsemen. But again, with the horses we named, good luck coming up on the weekend. We appreciate the visit.
Thank you very much.